Welcome, everybody, to Backstage. And we have a very special one today. Well, all the Backstages are special, but this one is really going to knock you out. For years and years and years, I have said the sleeping giant in our entire profession are the parents and the boosters, right? The people who the most important thing in their life is their child. And as you educators know, when you get a good band director, orchestra director, choir director, they can change that young person's life. And the parents, the first ones to come forward, say, "What did you do to my kid? My gosh." All of a sudden, they're taking the garbage out and getting matched socks and all this sort of thing. So through the years, I've come up on a wonderful person and a dear friend, Dr. David Vandewalker, and he has taken on single-handedly this entire parent booster landscape. And we're thrilled that he is the head of our community for parent boosters and is running this thing wide open. So would you please help me welcome my dear friend, David Vandewalker. How you doing, pal?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having us out today.
Take a moment and just share a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I've entered that third decade, I guess, over 33 years in music education, 31 as an active practice educator. I started early in my career out in Texas and taught middle school and high school as part of my day, but I've had the opportunity to study with some really great mentors early in my career that really helped define my trajectory, really. I think that's the number one thing I tell, and I know, Tim, you advocate for this as well. The first thing you could do to help yourself as a young teacher is find a mentor. And so I really am blessed for my early career in that. And so moved to Atlanta and started just kind of throwing out the who knows what, I could find a job or not. We got married and did all those 10 things of the most stressful things in life you can do in a year. I think we did about 8 of those in our first year of marriage. I moved to Atlanta and have been here ever since 1996. And so I've had the opportunity to teach in high school as well, and then at the university level at Georgia State. And it's just been a real privilege to be able to mentor the next generation of musician, whether it's in our school systems to the next generation of educators. And that's really been my passion in the last 10 or 15 years from that capacity.
Well, you also stuck your toe in the administrative water too for a while, didn't you?
I did. That's right. After I was at Georgia State, I became the fine arts coordinator for performing arts in a large district in Atlanta serving 100,000 students. And I supported about 200 music teachers and music therapists. We had 16 nationally board certified music therapists in the department as well.
That's incredible. Well, I know, and I think everybody who knows you had a phenomenal program at Harrison High School. They did all of the Bands of America stuff. They played at Midwest. They were the featured group several places. So what David triggered you somewhere along the way to go, this parent booster thing, nobody's really mining that. Maybe I should take it on. What was it, buddy?
Yeah, I think that it really kind of goes back to, if I go back to early in my career again, I laugh because we all have these defining moments, I think, and hopefully if we're blessed enough, we have multiples of those. And right about the time I became a young director of bands in my about 10th year or so of teaching, I heard you in a clinic give a conference story that you've told many times, and I probably heard it before, but it didn't resonate with me at that moment until I had put my director of bands hat on and I was looking at things from a whole new lens, right? And so, it goes back to your little guy in the bathroom where he needed some help, and I just remember vividly you were saying he assessed the situation, he asked for help, he came up with a plan, and then he was ready to modify and edit as needed, right? And so to me, I remember thinking, I can do this job. And then I got the job and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to do the job. And so I was not prepared. Believe it or not, those 4 classes of piano and all of that music history was important, but it didn't really help me be a successful band director. And I learned at that time, so I thought, okay, I've got to ask for help. And I was also reading some great books. And I hit Jim Collins' Good to Great. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to go and evaluate what do the Southern Flag of Honor programs do? What do those folks do? What are the people that play at Midwest? What are the people that have been to Grand Nationals? What are those directors doing? I started analyzing. I reached out and found some, really great, helpful people. And that's the thing that we tend as young teachers to think, oh, I can't ask them. But I can thankfully say, I've never been met with a roadblock. I've always been met with a smile and a generous heart. And so for me, after I did that research, I came up to kind of three conclusions, Tim. I discovered that all those people were hugely passionate, but I also discovered that they all had systems and a strategy. And I thought, okay, well, I'm really passionate. That was easy, but I had zero systems. I was just trying to survive as the band director. And I certainly didn't have a strategy to what I did. And so I really jumped on a quest. And really about that time, the band was doing well. We'd been to National Concert Festival and the concert side of things. Marching band was slow to grow. And I said, okay, well, I've got to start developing these systems. And I really learned from some of your sessions, and another great session that is another pivotal moment for me was hearing Frank Troika talk about servant leadership, and just make it simple. Say, this is what I see. This is what I want to see. This is what I hear. This is what I want to hear. And I said, okay, so I've got to quantify the subjective, and I've got to get help. So for me, I invested heavily for 5 years into the development of servant leadership for students and parents. And I can say I can go back and chart and graph our quantitative results of success of the program. That moment that I decided to hold on to this, let go of control as the band director, and empower that servant leadership on the student side and the parent side. That's really when the program really elevated on a national level to the depth. Because I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, about 20,000 people, and it was the band. We had about 100 of us, and we had a great concert program. We performed at the state conference, and we had plenty of plastic up in the band room. But I was thankful that I had that comprehensive experience, and that's what I wanted to provide my students. And so I just knew that I couldn't do all of that by myself. And I had another colleague, there were two of us. But I said, okay, if we're going to provide more experiences and our program was going to grow, we went from 2 concert bands and a marching band, non-competitive, to a competitive marching band, 3 concert bands, 3 jazz bands, 2 indoor percussion, and 3 winter guards, if you count the JV cadet guard at the peak of our growth. And so the only way that occurred was empowering the parents and the student leaders. But again, all I'm equipped with is music history and class piano and some really great, I'm not knocking any of that. I needed that to grow as a musician, but it took me a while, but I kind of came to the conclusion, I think you and I've talked about this before, but my grandfather was a Oklahoma Bandmaster Hall of Famer. And he once said to me, David, it's not your grandfather's band anymore. It's a different world. It's a different time. And I came to the conclusion that the modern day music educator, whether you're a band director, choir teacher, orchestra teacher, we are CEOs of a people-oriented small business with a serious music problem. And I joke about that because I'm really serious about my music making. But the reality is I wasn't able to help my students elevate their opportunities and experiences and success on my own until I started thinking more like a business and empowering parents to the point that, we had at some point over 20 active parent committees. And
Wow.
that moment, you know, my wife said that was the best thing that ever happened to us when we developed the system for the Booster Club, because that's when we got time back. And so for me, I think that was the key. It came out of necessity. You know, I liken it to what all of our listeners are do it in, with their own families at home. You know, when there's a crisis point and there's a need, you figure it out, you work it out, you create a plan, and you embark on how you're going to provide that for your kids because they need it. And so that's what we did. And so we had a great school district, but there was only so much they could do. There only so much support they could offer. But I wasn't willing to, I mean, quite honestly, I was trying to compete with 2 band directors against programs that had 100, 150 more kids than we did, and 4 or 5, you know, full-time instructors as part of their team, and which is fantastic. I think that's amazing. But at the same time, if I'm going to teach my kids how to be skilled executionists in the visual domain, I've got to find someone that knows how to do that. You know, Tim, in our science departments at our big high schools, we have 14 science teachers, and we can get a specialist to teach chemistry, and we can get a specialist to teach physics. And all of our parents agree, if you've got a physics teacher, that's who I want teaching my kid AP physics,
Right.
not the zoologist.
Right.
Well, I can teach trombone, I can teach percussion, but not as well as a percussionist and a trombone player. And so when I was able to expand the Booster Club and empower the parents, then we had the opportunity to bring in percussion specialists. And then that quality of instruction impacted the child. And it wasn't because I was trying to slack or I wasn't trying to do my job, but I said, wait a minute, if we can provide specialists in other areas and it benefits kids like physics, then don't our students deserve that too? So it just became, it kind of grew out of that passion of my mantra is this: where are we? Where do we want to be? And how are we going to get there? And so that's kind of how it all grew. That's a big, long answer to your question. Sorry about
Well, no, I mean, that's important because it shows you've been to the well.
Yeah.
I mean, you know the drill, you know the parts that need to be tweaked and so forth. So I'm a band director watching this, or an orchestra director watching this, and I go, well, okay, that's my dilemma. What should I do?
Yeah,
So,
that's great. And you know, that's really where my lens and passion is turned to, because once we've reached that point of my career, I said, you know, what was starting to light my fire was to support the younger generation, the next generation of teachers, and that person that's in that role that I was in 20 years ago. And I was blessed to have people that invested in me that could expedite my growth. And so to me, I think you have to do an assessment. If you're in that situation, you have to ask those 3 questions. Where am I? Where do I want to be? And how will I get there? And do, you know, in our growth and our progress, I had the opportunity to publish a couple of books on the topic and be able to share with the next generation. And then in the pandemic, we've moved into another platform and being able to do that. And so when I went to Georgia State is where I started being forced to think about it through a new lens, as I was responsible for student teachers and that next generation of educator. And so it helped me quantify, how can I share this? And so for me, I talk about, in 3 ways. We need to reflect, imagine, and strategize. And so for that new teacher saying, okay, that's me, how do I do? Well, first we need to reflect. Where are we? Where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? What are our assets? What are our human resource assets? What are our physical assets? And get realistic. And then imagine. You know, I call it Disney big, right? They're the best in the planet of what's possible and imagining what can happen. And so if we reflect on what is, where are we? What's our current state? And then we imagine, and we should collaborate with our servant leader adults, right? And bring some of our key opinion leaders in our organization and bring them into the fold in this project with us. And then imagine what's possible, and then break it down again to, okay, now based on this parameters of our current state and our human resources, our physical resources, what's doable? What's doable? And then this is the key. I had the privilege of working with a psychologist, sports psychologist in Texas. His name's Peter Ferrito, Teams to Teams, worked with a lot of bands in Texas and helped me grow in our student leadership stuff and how kids tick. But Peter said to our drum majors and our student leaders time and time again, there's a lot of choices you can make, but the most important one is what's best for the organization next. So I call it the what best next. Okay. So when we are imagining, let's don't put any blinders on. Let's dream big. Then let's refine it down to the funnel of what's doable. And then let's decide what 3 things, if we could improve and fix with a parent organization, that would have the largest impact on our program to get you from where you are to where you want to be. And then once you've done those 3 things, decide what's best next to get me to that goal. And that's where the strategy then becomes important, because now you can be strategic in defining your boosters of what that is. If it's volunteers, well, then we need to define the job and then quantify who our human resource talent is and what they like to do and match them, right? Because the first thing you do when you ask someone for help, the first question they're going to ask is, what do I got to do? Right. Well, for a long time, my answer was, I don't know, I'm the band director. So that's where the strategy comes into play. Once you've narrowed down the focus of what would get the most impact for our initial effort, and then strategize. If it's like I said, the number one thing I think comes up from every person I talk to is, how do we get more people involved? How do we get more volunteers? And to me, it's like, okay, well, unfortunately, passing a clipboard doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's a personal invite. Don't you agree? It's about the relationship. Oh. And it's, I just have to ask somebody. So we provide strategies in our training of how to do that. But the number one factor is you have to decide, right, who do I have? What jobs do I have? Define them so they're not scary, so that you can show people, all you got to do is these 3 things this month and these 3 things next month. But when you say, will you be the uniform chair? Whoop, whoop. Oh, that's a huge job. I could never do that. But if we strategize and show them it's only these kind of things this month and these things this month, and then we find out someone who likes to do those kinds of things and we ask them, we get a win.
Yeah.
Because we can show people it's doable. They like to do it. And then what happens when they're successful, right? Yeah. They want to serve again.
I mean, I listen to you and I'm getting excited and want to run and start my booster club. Let me play devil's advocate here for a second and go, well, I only got 4 people that show up at my booster meetings. Should I just cut it off, or is there still hope?
Well, there's great hope, because you got 4 people there, right?
Yes.
I can say, thankfully, a lot of this in the stories I tell, a lot of this goes back to the uniform lady. And when, all of a sudden it hit me one day in May, oh my gosh, Sarah's graduating. She was my all-state bassoonist. Well, who can complain? The fact that you have a bassoonist is a big deal, right? Much less an all-state bassoonist, right? And then, more tragic than that, I went, oh no, that means Liz is graduating too, Sarah's mom. Well, she'd been there for 10 years and she'd been the booster club president, the treasurer, the whatever, but so you have to go with what you've got. Sure. And you know what? The booster club, when I got to Harrison, it was a good group. But as we grew and we focused on student achievement and what we wanted to provide for our kids, that the John Rockefeller statement that says good is the enemy of great, that can be kind of our problem. And so it doesn't matter if you're a big program or a small program. We have way more programs that have 4 parents in them than 40. Let's be real. So it's about, how do we harness those 4 people? Just like you would in your orchestra program, right? If you've got 10 kids in front of you, you're going to figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are. What can they play? What we shouldn't play? Oh my goodness, there's no way, right? And then harness the strengths, just like you pick your music that features the kids that you've got in front of you. how can we utilize the skill set of those 4 parents? And then here's the secret. How do we get them to go find a sidekick?
Right.
When we talk, those of us in our generation, I often, the Texas Bandmasters seminars, we talk about, when I say Johnny Carson and Ed, or we talk about Lucy and Ethel, or we talk about Barney, and Andy, I've got to come up with some new analogies because the current generation doesn't know who I'm talking about, so I liken it now to the Grey's Anatomy, a Grey's Anatomy television series. They all talk about my person, you're my person. Okay, so we've got to help those 4 people go out and find their person and be their sidekick. And then that's how we really grow armies, is by defining our roles and responsibility, getting to know people, building relationships in a tangible way, and empowering them to do things that we know they'll be successful doing. And unfortunately, we just kind of throw a clipboard out and we take whoever we can get. And when we get someone to say yes, we say, hallelujah, thank you, Jesus, and keep on running.
Right.
But we don't empower them. And that's part of the problem. So to me, it's start where you are, maximize the talents you have, empower them to bring people along beside them. Because the reality is, all of us enjoy doing work with a buddy.
Oh, yeah.
We'll all work harder and work longer if we got someone to work alongside us.
Let me take a left turn. This is great. I stop right here and I'm like, I'm gonna go out and get some people. We're gonna recruit a bunch of people, because I think for the parents, still the most important thing is their child. And if they can do something where they can work with their child in a family setting, it's not going to get much better. Tell us, because we're so excited about the parent booster community that you've created. And I know there's a really big thing coming up called the Strategic Booster Academy. Can you share a couple thoughts about that?
Sure. Well, this goes back to, again, my passion for wanting to help and empower the next generation. And for me, as I said, we were able to share with the books. And then we started about 10 years ago hosting live strategic booster institutes and having a full day training. The largest one we have is the Texas Bandmaster Association. We have 350 parents come and spend the day, and we really dig in and do a deep dive. And so what we've done in this time of the pandemic and the rebooting, and I've had a chance to do a little bit of a pivot, to use the current word. And the reality for me is I love a great book, but our 30-somethings don't go to a book as their first choice for going to find information or to get help. They go to YouTube and they go to online and virtual things. So the Strategic Booster Academy is essentially all of our Booster Club training that we've been doing in live seminar sessions put into a virtual digital format, where now it's really exciting for me, Tim. I can only imagine what is next, because there's so many challenges for parent boosters of whether, how do you take time off work? How do you get travel? Do you have money to take people and go places? But now with the Strategic Booster Academy as an online subscription for an entire year, you can train your entire booster club. You can give folks assignments of, you're going to deal with communication. Well, just go focus on the communication module. There's 6 different modules that help us achieve the systems that I was telling you about that I applied in our band program, whether it was the music side or the parent side. And it focuses on 3 things: the message, the method, and the mission, right? Focus your message to get your community behind you. Set up your system and your methodology of how you're going to do business, the business blueprints, and then the mission itself, doing the work and sharing the wins with the community in an advocacy way that's effective in how we use strategic communication. So there's 6 modules in the academy that focus on strategic planning, community and building volunteers, building strategic blueprints for doing business and fundraisers, compliance. There's all that government compliance and how do we deal with all of that element, as well as strategic fundraising and how are folks across the country really maxing out their fundraising strategies, and how do we build a business blueprint that whether the parents that did the fundraiser last year are still here or not, it can continue and be sustained because we have strategic plans put in place for those. And then how do we communicate at large? And so the Strategic Booster Academy deals with those 6 topics and those 6 modules to provide and to walk the teams through how to develop their message, and then give them structure. How do we create that methodology for our program? And then how do we communicate it in such a way that is effective to reach our own team or our community at large and our stakeholders, to make sure that we are ensuring the longevity of the programs in our community.
So they can bring Dr. Vandewalker and all of the library of information right into their own music rehearsal rooms, yeah?
That's right. You know, if they want to just look at 2 modules or a module, they're designed in 6 to 10 minute video clip lessons. And then there's PDF workbook and a guidebook for each module. So the reality is you could come in and have your executive board meeting once a month and spend 15 and 20 minutes watching a couple of video sessions and doing some of the activities with it. Or you could host your own. We're going to all come to the orchestra room. We're going to come to the band room on this Saturday morning, and we're going to look at the strategic communication, and that's going to be our focus. Or they can just log in as individual parents and explore away. So it's really, that's one of the things I'm most excited about, is that I know as a band director, we spent a decade exploring all of this and developing the method. But now we have a way to say, here's your subscription, Booster Club president, run, go. And for me as a director, now I know that there's some guidance that I can help and go along the way, but I'm not having to create the professional development for my parents.
And I will access this where?
Well, you know, it's available through the Consumer Division of Education website. And so if you go to the resources tab or to the communities tab, you can get to it from either direction of that. I think now's the perfect time for an organization to jump in, because setting up next year, there's a whole module about building volunteers and how do we get to know them and match personalities and define jobs, and how do we become successful in matching those human resources to our needs to grow the program. And now's the perfect time to do that before we go into officer nominations, and how do we build all of that happens really in this February to April time zone. So to me, I'm excited about the opportunity for us to really get it fully launched, and an opportunity to really help folks grow in that way.
What about your monthly webinars, which I just think is the coolest thing in the world?
It's really it's been a great time. We started third Wednesdays of every month. Parents come from all over the country and log in to our monthly webinar, where we just talk about a topic at hand in the now. We've recently had sessions where we've talked about the federal funds and available through the ESSER project. We've talked about our great friend Barry Morgan, who is a band director turned lawyer turned judge, and has come in and shared with us some of the legal issues of 6 ways you could lose your 501c3 without really knowing it, you know, from a legal perspective of compliance, to how do we develop strategic plans. So it's really great. We've also had opportunities to highlight some different programs and different fundraisers that have been meaningful and beneficial for their programs. And so it's truly just a time to connect with other folks. There's also a Facebook group that goes in collaboration with that, so that we can network and build the community, so that people can share. You know, just a few weeks ago, we had someone say, have you ever done credit cards for your concession stand? And boom, there was like 6 different responses in the Facebook group immediately about the different platforms that each different clubs have explored and used. Well, that's really valuable. And we have the opportunity to do that on the monthly basis in our topics and then in the Facebook group as well. So it's been exciting to see the brain share occur, you know.
Well, and all those are available too. You can
100%. The
recordings.
webinars are free every month. The
Yeah.
Facebook group is free to be a part of. All they have to do is click the links in the through the community. Yep. They go to the Division of Education, Consumer Division of Education, and go to the community, hit Parent Boosters. There's a way to join that community free. You just log in, and then you have access to those different portals and can sign up for the webinars for free, and go to the Facebook group and jump in.
Yeah, and there's just some killer things and some of the interviews and so forth you did that everybody can get to now. It's not a one-time boom, right? You can
That's right.
I told you this time would go fast, right? And we could be on this forever. I'm going to give you one last subject, and we got about 2 minutes here, friend, because you and I've talked about this before. The Parent Boosters is the mother lode that you can mine forever, and it keeps generating more gold as we go along, and not just for fundraising.
Right.
There's many other benefits. Would you just speak to that just a little bit?
Well, the thing that I share with parents in the live session is I ask you this question. What needs to happen in your organization that does not require a music education degree? And if you as a parent can assume support in some kind of role to fulfill those roles that don't require a music education degree, then that frees up your music teacher to do things she's uniquely qualified to do that only she can do, right? There are lots of people that are way better at working database management than I am, for sure, and building websites or whatever. But I can tell you, Tim, I, David Vandewalker, did not solicit a chaperone for a single trip in my 16 years as director of bands at Harrison. Now, we had chaperones, of course, but I met with our chaperone liaison and we planned out the year of how many we needed to have, et cetera. And that was a way that those parents could contribute to add value to the program, to bring their people side by side. Let's go enjoy time with our kids. That helped me because I have to have supervision. So that has nothing to do with fundraising. That has everything to do with how can I help the program free up my music educator to do what they are uniquely gifted to do. So there's a lot, that list, you and I, we've all seen that graphic, right? That cartoon with all the different hats that goes up about 3 stories high, right. With all the different roles and tips. Well, most of those have nothing to do with a music education degree. Right. So there are plenty of ways, a plethora of ways that parents can add value by offering their expertise into the benefits of their child. Because that's what it's about, right? We're all here to make it a better experience for their child.
Well, and we all know some of those parent groups have become clubs. They have their alumni, they have their own apparel and so forth. So it's a win-win-win.
Absolutely.
Okay. One more question, and then I will let you go. Will you come back and do this again?
Oh, I'd love to. It'd be awesome.
Because the parent booster community, everybody, is the hottest thing going right now. And please be encouraged to tune in, to check it out, to go back and look at some of those recordings. It's literally, it's platinum in every way. David, thank you. Dr. Vandewalker is not only a dear friend, I love him, and he is one of those people who's always on the front lines, making sure that our children have the best advantage they possibly can in their educational journey. So David, thank you again, my friend. And to all of you, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Backstage. In the meantime, let the music begin.